We are back on Power and Politics. Earlier in the show, we mentioned how the President and the Congress are setting new highs, actually I should say new lows, in poll numbers. It seems that the public, both around the United States and here in New Jersey, are eager for an end, obviously, to the war in the Middle East. But do these events and poll numbers have an impact on the legislative elections coming up next month? Let's talk about that a bit with Dr. Joe Marbach. He's Professor of Political Science at Seton Hall. Joe, a lot of attitudes go into these elections as a part to just the pure numbers. How do you feel today in polls, which is why they're not really a complete document here. But you know, the attitude toward corruption in New Jersey, and you know, it's almost universal revulsion. And these numbers on corruption, they're like way at the other end. I've never seen anything like that. However, it doesn't seem it penetrates the cement bunkers of the politicians here, or even how people end up voting to reelect them.
Yeah, it's quite amazing, and we're going to see this in some poll numbers that are going to be released very soon that are going to show that the public is very dissatisfied with this legislature in general. They're dissatisfied with the amount of corruption. They believe it's increased in the past 4 years. But then when they're asked, how do you vote on your own legislator? How do you vote on your own assemblyman, your own senator? They say, he's great, she's great, let's put him back in the office. So there's a real disconnect between the individual.
It's sort of like they want to blame the abstract, and I know in the Congress, for instance, they always talk about this, a 99% re-election rate, but they'll say in polls the same thing that's happening in New Jersey, corrupt, all this kind of stuff, the legislature hated it, you know, and then the Congress hated it, but then you mention their name of their congressperson, and they go, well, he's with me. We're trying to fight what it is. You know, but wait a minute, there's 500 some odd there. There's 120 in the legislature. I mean, it means nothing then. When you look at that poll, what the effect's going to be in the election.
It really doesn't, and it's part of the acceptance of corruption that does go on in New Jersey. When it gets really out of hand, we throw our hands up and say, oh, let's do something about it, and we actually rely on the U.S. Attorney to do it.
Which is exactly what's happening now.
Right, but then there's still lower levels of corruption. I had a parking ticket. I took it to the state senator and it got fixed. But that's okay. You know, that's how like politics is done.
That's like permitted corruption. That's like obeying the law in the way we obey the law, 55-mile-an-hour highway limit, right? Everyone goes, no, there's 10 miles an hour added to that. Yeah, they only got a ticket at 65 in New Jersey, right?
A little bit, yeah, on either side. Or this guy's gotten my brother-in-law a job, so he's the greatest guy ever, or something along that line. So
which will help that person get elected.
Exactly. So we allow this certain amount of what some call honest graft to go on. Government has to perform services. They have to hire people to perform those services. So who are you going to give contracts to? Your political enemies or your political friends? And I think that's an understood tenet in New Jersey politics, but it's when it comes down to politicians lining their pockets where we've seen the greatest amount of outcry and uproar by the public.
And you know, another thing, we talk about the incumbents getting reelected all the time, and we talk about how it's sometimes countering even the polling data that says they're bad guys, and they get reelected, right? Yeah. But isn't part of that what is sometimes called the Incumbency Protection Act, which is the books are cooked before the deal in the form of redistricting, which occurs after the census, the federal census every year. So they redistrict the lines, both congressional and state reapportionment, and they protect their incumbency things first and foremost, and so you get this gerrymandering and all this stuff. I mean, does that add into cynicism, or is that just real politics? Too bad.
Well, it is the real politics. Too bad. I mean, when the two parties get down and they sit down and they draw their maps, they're both protecting their incumbents, and public interest, I think, is really sacrificed at that point, because it's that lack of competitive districts, I think, that contributes to a lot of the corruption that goes on.
How do you fix that, Joe? Because usually they're the ones designing their own thing. It's like a cabal, or you know, an Appalachia meeting or something, where they all say, "This is yours, this is mine." That's how that happens. Yeah. How do you fix it?
Well, we actually have an opportunity in New Jersey, because we have it's a bipartisan group that comes together to draw the maps. But there's an 11th member appointed by the Supreme Court, who's usually an academic, who could come in and really say, I don't like any of these maps, and we're going to draw them and make them really competitive. That hasn't happened. I was just doing some research on this.
Are you lobbying to be that 11th member?
I don't want to be that 11th member, but I was doing some research on this very recently, written an article for an almanac in New Jersey that's coming out. And in the 70s and the 80s and the 90s, after those census, and even 2000, the maps have gone either Democratic or Republican, because they've been able to convince the tiebreaker, the academic, that their map is a little more representative than the opposition's map.
I thought it was interesting in the congressional redistricting here that was done a few years ago, they all cut their deals among the members and left one undone, which was called the remainder district, which is the Garrett district across the top of the roof of the state. It goes from Bergen, Passaic, all the way over, and it really was what was left over after all the senior guys cut their deals.
But still heavily Republican. You know, I don't think Garrett's going to be unseated by a Democrat.
Right. In fact, it's the only district that Brett Schundler, to say how conservative it is, when Brett Schundler ran for governor, it was the only congressional district that he carried in the entire state out of the dozen.
Yeah, so the leftover district actually became the most protected district among the congressional districts.
Right, exactly. Just 30 seconds left. The Iraq thing, I wanted to not get out of here with that, talking about attitudes. Is the Iraq thing still going to have play, or is more, as this winds down, it's more domestic issues, healthcare, economy, kind of stuff like that, do you think?
I think it's going to be very local issues. I mean, this race is the tagline of the station, as local gets, and that's what the political issues are. It's
and Tip O'Neill says, all politics is local.
And that's
Good.
exactly what's going on.
All right, thanks, Joe, for coming with us, telling us that. Okay, so stay with us as we continue on New Jersey Power and Politics. It's report card time for the Garden State. And let me tell you, it's not pretty. I'll give you the grades on what we're talking about when Power and Politics continues, so please stay with us.